Tuesday, rescheduled Tuesday, March 8th, Radnor Township Shade Tree Commission meeting. We have a couple of changes on the agenda. We're going to move a couple folks around and start this off. I'm chairing tonight. Jack is absent tonight. I imagine we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you like to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First on the list is going to be 836 Millmar Road.
How you doing? Thanks for having us out here tonight. I can say I should first apologize, right? So I've been on that side of it, and I think when regulations aren't followed, it's distressing. So I apologize to the extent we've run afoul of your regulations.
Just excuse, could you introduce
yourself,
yourself,
Dave
please?
Falcone. I'm the owner of the property.
Okay.
I'll give you a little bit of back history on the property, and I have with me Michael McKenna as well. So this property was a blighted property in the township and had been abandoned, totally unoccupied for over 2 years, but uncared for as long as we'd been in the neighborhood, which was 5.5 years. It's almost directly across the street from me. So about 18 months ago, or a little longer than that now, we pursued the purchase of the property. I had been in contact on a pretty regular basis with the township over that pursuit because it was a short sale and there was just kind of a bizarre activity on the property. So as we entered into discussions with one of the homeowners, we were kind of off and on the property, and that's when I got Michael involved to start walking the property for ultimately what would be a landscaping plan. That's what Michael does. And through that process, the bank repoed the house and locked all the doors and basically began doing work up at the house. So over a period of 18 months, it fell into kind of a significant disrepair. There were trees down, limbs down, had fallen on the house, were leaning on the house. And doors were broken in, a branch had come through a second floor window, and it was totally blighted. Things were stolen out of the house. So during that process, I was in discussions with, again, different township staff about kind of where we were in the process. After we purchased the property, we went and had 3 arborists come out to the property and take a look at the trees that were there and were still standing. And they basically came up with 3 different plans for the property. Strobert, who we used, was the most conservative. They found the task for them was to take down any tree that was dangerous or diseased. And they were the only one that wanted to keep, if you go to the property, there's still an enormous tree right in the middle of the front yard. They were the only arborist that said that tree could survive. And you'll see, they said they could save it with cabling, which they did. There were stumps that were a result of our taking down, but also a result of previous activity on the property. There were big pieces of trees laying in the back right corner of the property when we acquired it. Fences down. So when they came on the property, they were there 2 days. They cleaned up everything that was down, that we took down. And we got a notice at one point from Sue that there was activity. We were stopped. I immediately came into the township. I said, look, whatever we're doing, we're not supposed to be doing, I'm happy to. We stopped everything. Nothing was done since then. And I said, just tell me what we need to do and we'll make it right. There was certainly no attempt to be deceptive. All the work was done during the week. I insisted that it would be. I informed the neighbors that there was going to be work done at the property, called to the township, so we're going to be doing some cleaning at the property, tried to be as transparent as possible. I'm not a tree expert, so I don't know. But that's the case, and so that's what we did. And that's why
Mr. Chairman, so I talked to Mr. Falcone when Sue called him. He didn't call me. He came in. He was very upset. He was very concerned about this. So he took, the township was eyeing this property as an issue because it was more or less abandoned and overgrown and trees down all over. So if we were to step in, we probably would have done a considerable amount of this ourselves if we were to to take this property and clean it. I sat down with Mr. Falcone, went over the rules and regs. He wasn't doing anything malicious or, nefarious. He was just trying to clean it up. It was an honest mistake. He said, Steve, he stopped immediately, went over the rules. He says, whatever I have to do to make this right, So I just want to let the board know, this was not a developer that came in and decided to clear cut for a lot. In his eyes, he was doing what was right for the property, right? And he had somebody assisting him. And in our eyes, a lot of what if you had seen this place before he started, you would have said, wow. So I just wanted to put that out there for the commission.
When you took title to the property, did you take any photographs of its existing condition? Do you have anything that looks like?
Nothing. It would never, so this would be my third house. I've never taken pictures of my house when I bought the property.
Okay.
So it's just not something.
And I want to understand. So you originally purchased the property yourself, is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah,
okay. And then the bank held it from when to when? How did that happen?
So the bank, as I understand it, the property was completely abandoned for a little over 2 years as part of a...
Who had title of the property at that time?
The previous owners.
Okay.
The previous owners of the property. And as I understand it, before they took it, it was the man's families. So they had been there for a long, long time, since the 60s. So when they left it, the bank locked it. They essentially took it over to maintain it and put it on the docket in media for short sale, a sheriff's sale. It had been stayed, I think, 9 or 10 times over the process because they were negotiating different agreements, one of which was with us. The intricacy, it was a very bad divorce. There was just a lot of things that were going on that made it very difficult to make that transfer smooth. And as a result of that, it became blighted over 2 years, and again, many years before that. They were my neighbors, I know. And interestingly enough, on the opposite side of us is another abandoned house that's been there for now, totally abandoned for over 5 years. So maybe it's us, but it's bad. And there, I know the townships had to step in and do landscaping work because that is even more severe. So I was in contact, so with the owner of the house, the man, the husband. So when we would see kind of trucks and service people up there, I'd always send him a note. Hey, there's somebody up at your house. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if they're doing work at your house or if they're doing work at the neighbor's house. And he would sometimes come, he wouldn't sometimes. It was not a great situation, but we had an interest in the property. So we were very interested to see that whatever was going on up there was okay. To the extent it could be. And ultimately what happened up there was not okay. There were a lot of things, people in and out of the house. It was just a bad situation. I know that at one point he had said something fell, I think a tree on the roof, and they'd come and they put a big tarp on it and did like a sloppy patchwork. And so it was just a very interesting 18 months.
And you had no ability to control anything that was going on there anyway, is that correct?
Nothing, zero. But I just, again, so whenever I would see it, I would say, hey, there's stuff going on up there, you should know. And, I felt like he would have more say with somebody than certainly we would. So it was more about just trying.
Who were the other two tree companies in there? You mentioned three tree companies.
We had,
it was Strober.
Yeah, we had Monster and we had Corbo.
Okay.
And it's interesting, so when you kind of get the people out, it's amazing, they all said very good things about each other, which was refreshing. The job was too big for Monster, and we were down to between Strobert and Corbo.
So I'm having a hard time with this timeline.
Yeah.
In other words, when the arborist was on site.
It was before we even took ownership of the property. We had arborists come on and start walking it. Michael had walked the property probably 18 months ago or a year ago, and that was at the permission of the owner because he was working with us to try and facilitate the short sale. So we knew there were...
The short sale or is the sheriff's sale?
It was listed for sheriff's sale. It was placed on the docket, but in order to avoid the sheriff's sale, we had to negotiate with the bank a short sale. So that was the continued stay. We were negotiating with the bank's attorney to purchase the property, and that's ultimately what we did. However, if we had been unsuccessful, it would have gone to sheriff's sale. So that was, I think, the middle of November when settlement actually occurred. And then, everything was kind of very quick after that. But we had been constantly engaged in the process because we wanted to acquire the property and we wanted to get started kind of immediately. And so that's what we did. And so we knew we had problems up there. We were able to see kind of what was going on, just from walking the property with the owner and then kind of on our own at his.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm Bob Zinkowski, the Township Manager. I brought the Superintendent of Police along with me here this evening. Just as some background on this home had fallen in disrepair for a good while. Outside of what this work was going on here, blighted would be a complement to that property. We're at a point here where there was no action being taken by the bank at all to try to make some correction. There were a number of the neighbors that were quite concerned of how bad this property had looked. The doors were open to the home. The contractor that was supposed to be maintaining the home was doing an awful job at it. Doors were being left open. We had concern from neighbors that there were people going in and out of the home as well. There were safety concerns that we had in regards to not only the poor maintenance, trash being left around the exterior of the home, animals getting in and out of the home. It was clear as though that there was water in that getting in the home. There was an abandoned car that was in the driveway. I don't think the trees had been maintained in that time period. I believe one of the neighbors had a concern of whether or not the trees were going to fall, which way, if they did come down, which way they were going to go. I think, as Steve had mentioned, our concern is we were going to go ahead and take action on the site which we have done in a window of probably the last 12 months on some of these homes. We've just gone on the property here where people have abandoned these, and we've done the maintenance and the repair to start to clean these things up. This is one of the homes that we were targeting, and we knew that there was a window here where the bank was trying to do something here, so we allowed this window. But there were trees that were in very bad shape here on the property, so it was either going to be left up to the property owner now, Mr. Falcone, either take care of these, or the township was going to go on the property and remove some of these trees, as we have done with some of these other homes. So it actually saved the township money, so we thank you for actually doing that, because if not, we would have been out the money and then actually leaned the property back for these. So just to verify, I know that our codes department probably has those photographs that you may be looking for, but I can attest to that. What Mr. Falcone's saying is that those trees were in bad shape. I know that the one had gone through the home. I know there were a lot of big limbs laying around the property. I doubt those trees were in any kind of condition to remain up. And then also the concern was, I believe there was one big tree, whether it was going towards one of the neighbors' homes.
That's right.
And I believe that was one of the concerns. So I'll ask the superintendent if there's anything you wanted to add.
Just to corroborate everything Mr. Falcone said, it was in dire repair, and I'm not an arborist, of course, but there were tree limbs on the roof and leaves and everything, and animals getting inside the house. It was really a blighted area.
Did you deem it a property that needed extra surveillance on your part, just to be aware of, where did it become an issue, I guess, for the police, just to make sure it was safe, or that people were not in there, et cetera?
Yes, sir. In fact, the township manager had us do periodic checks. There were even a couple of times I know Mr. Falcone called me on my cell phone on the weekend. I was out there 3 times myself. A township manager mentioned that car. That car was in that driveway for at least 12 years because I looked at the stickers that were on the window and the license plate. That car was abandoned for 12 years. All the tires were flat. So it just gives you an idea what it looked like in that property. So.
And I can attest to the fact that a property like this, if Mr. Falcone did not go in, I can guarantee you the manager would have had me go in. I'll be perfectly honest, because we've done it on other homes from a safety standpoint. And also, I forget the term, but that one bad apple spreads, right? So we don't like to let that fester. Mm-hmm. So I most likely would have brought somebody in to do a considerable amount of this work.
Right. Well, I ask about the timeline because, we get these photos of stumps,
Yep.
large stumps, and that opens our eyes really wide.
Sure. No, I understand.
And it's a concern. We didn't have all this information at the time when we got these, and it really, really opens our eyes.
Right.
And that's why I ask about the timing. You know, when you saw these risky trees, and you decided, okay, we're just gonna take care of that, and we're gonna get them taken down right away. I'm curious, was
It's about
something
30 days from when we acquired the property to when this work was done.
What was the specific date when you actually had title to the property?
I don't know it, but it was the middle of November, and the only reason I can say that is because it was targeted for a sheriff's sale, and the judge had told us that there would be no further extensions beyond that sheriff's sale, and we settled 24 hours before sheriff's sale. So I know that to be generally when it was. That's, I guess that's probably as clear as I can be. I don't know anything more beyond
Well,
that.
I mean, I know we have this report that was sent to the Shade Tree Commission. I'm wondering when did we get this?
January.
Yeah,
January.
I think, if I may, with all
Sure.
due respect, if I could request.
Sure.
I don't really, just my opinion and my recommendation to the commission is that I don't think the timing is really an issue. I think really what we should just focus, my recommendation is the commission should focus on, okay, we have a property that this occurred. We have the resident, the applicant, if you will. And what, if anything, occurs from here? As opposed, because I think we can drill real deep down into the timing.
Right.
The reality of it is, when I had Doug go out there, he was sent out. So unfortunately, there's, as Mr. Falcone said, a lot of hands were in this from the township, not necessarily always talking to each other. So we get a call that trees are going down. Doug goes out, takes a tape measure. He's not aware of what Mr. Falcone's purpose was in that. If I had John Hosback there 2 days earlier, I think this would be a very different conversation right now. So my request is let's not get too detailed oriented on when we received the reports and when settlement took place, and really look at, okay, what do we have? What, if any, action should be taken? And I don't recommend action on my end. And how do we move forward? Just a recommendation.
Okay. Sure.
I guess that begs the question then, what are your plans for the property? I mean,
So-
what is your intention? What do you want to do with it? I
So
mean,
we're
you
gonna-
own it.
Yeah, we are, and so we're going to move there. We hope to be in kind of at the end of the summer. That would be our goal. We're going to totally re-landscape the property. We're going to plant trees back along the property line where some of the older ones came down, and it's going to be our house. It's going to be our home. So that's, we have a vested interest in making it beautiful and safe, and a place where we want to raise our kids. That's our goal.
Mm-hmm.
That's our intent. So that's it.
Mr. Falcone, does your rep have an idea of what you were going to plant?
He does. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Michael McKenna. I'm with a firm by the name of MAT Site Management. Just to give you a little bit of background, I've been a landscape contractor in the Philadelphia metropolitan region for over 30 years. And even though that might belie my age, I do have a bachelor's science degree in landscape contracting from Pennsylvania State University, along with a minor in horticulture. So I'm of a horticulturalist mind. And I had assisted Mr. Falcone in assessing the property while he was in due diligence prior to acquiring the property. And probably one of the first comments out of my mouth was, Dave, you got a lot of tree issues here, and they're beyond the scope of even my expertise. I implore you to engage with a licensed arborist and have things assessed and go about remedying the safety issues that are present on site beyond the aesthetic qualities. And obviously, being a landscape contractor, it's my ultimate vision to enhance a property to its fullest extent, as well as to preserve what is naturally beautiful on a site to best fit client and the surrounding. And obviously, the nature of the neighborhood is of mature trees, similar to a neighborhood that I grew up in Malvern, and I have done quite a bit of work in Radnor Township throughout my career. And I know that the trees that we've discussed installing on the site
are to be in the character of the nature of the neighborhood, of shade trees that will develop into large canopy trees that'll be befitting of the neighborhood. Now, they may be of cultivars that are improved, for disease resistance and insect resistance, as well as to bring the home befitting of the township, of a quality landscape that has a curb appeal and retains the value, or actually enhances and improves the value of the home as well as the neighborhood at large. And I will say that my first encounter of the site was prior to his acquiring it. The second encounter was shortly after he had acquired it. I had made, in fact, I think Strobert was one of my recommendations from prior experience working with them in northern Delaware and southeastern PA, and I felt that they were one of the better and more competitive tree companies that actually had an arborist of a mind of my own. If something could be preserved, preserve it. If it's diseased or dead or damaged or poses a safety issue, let it come down. And again, I know where my limits are from an expertise standpoint. So I believe Dave followed those recommendations, hired a firm with a licensed arborist, and went about doing things on the property that were deemed necessary from a safety standpoint. Beyond the aesthetic, I think if you were going full aesthetic, I think there might be a couple more things to be done, and I could understand the neighbors' concerns left and right side of the property, particularly on the right side. That tree that was close to the corner of the structure itself had a deep lean, and I am happy to see that they went about cabling the large tree that's very prominent in the front yard. And I will say that the time of my inspection or walking the property, there were numerous site stumps pre-existing prior to any work that Mr. Falcone and Strobert had done. I can't say that I did a thorough report. I have a plot plan. We do have a landscape design that we're working on from both a hardscaping and softscaping perspective. And I feel that ultimately, when things are complete, I think the property will be better for what's occurred than it was previously.
Sure. Okay.
If there's any questions that I can be of help with.
Anybody has any? All right. No, that's fine. I appreciate all your information and your detailed information. Mr. Falcone, I just want to be straight up with you about this, and I was asking about the timeline, and to everyone else here. Again, we see those stumps, and we wonder,
Sure.
when they were taken down, and this is not, I'm like giving you a slap on the wrist to say,
Yeah.
don't do that again. But the thing is that
I won't. So
No, well, right. Well, my concern is I don't want to set any precedent that you say, even though it's a risky tree, oh, we're just going to take it down.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, but we have to have a good timeline of when this happens, and we try to do that so we know, hey, somebody came out, looked at it, it was deemed risky or unsafe, has to be immediately taken down, or we took it down immediately because it was ready to fall on a house,
Yeah.
and immediately we had a report made. So we know and we feel comfortable with that. And that's why that's why I was asking about time.
no, it makes perfect sense. It
That's all.
does.
I just want to let you know I'm not singling you out.
No, and I deserve to be singled out. I'm here, right? You've got me in
Well,
front
right,
of you,
right.
so
But as
I
far
can
as
appreciate it.
how I'm being specific and detailed with the timeline, that's
Yeah,
all.
no, I appreciate it very much. I do.
Sure. Okay. Well,
I have a question for Mr. Falcone. Do you have any idea of how many trees you will be replanting?
Yes, I think the initial plan without any landscaping was around 18, was what we had discussed planning on the properity.
New
New
trees
trees, yeah.
of 2-3 inch caliper?
Actually, in excess, I think 3.5 inch caliper, and I think 2/3 were shade tree.
That's what I was gonna ask you.
1/3 was approximately evergreen varieties, and they were trees befitting.
Yeah. And that's distinct from all the landscaping that we would do around the house.
Dave, how big is the lot?
I think it's about an acre, Skip. So I think that's
There's a lot of trees on there before and a lot of trees going in. That's a lot.
So That's what
in a
took-
nice way, but
Yes, so we thought that 18 was probably the most we could do without making it look totally overcrowded, and we walked the property, and that's basically where we settled it now. So they were gonna, as they were putting in and drawing the plan, we were gonna reevaluate, but that was the initial assessment of where maybe we should go.
Obviously, the positioning of the evergreens will be in the areas of most need from a screening perspective. And then the shade trees that we're going to utilize them in a fashion to provide some screening as well, strategically positioned, to provide some privacy in the backyard and the second, rear-facing second floor windows. And then also to, kind of jazz up the appearance a bit, and, bring some depth to the side yards, particularly the right side yard. And there's still a great wooded character of the lot to the very rear, and to the left side, and then onto the neighbor's property on the left side. And we felt that we could kind of tie things together by placing some trees along the right side as well.
Okay.
So it's a work in progress, because there's still, I know the interior fit and finish is a work in progress as
Sure,
well.
right.
And I have Dave's wife to deal with, so that introduces a whole other element into things. But having done some work for his family previously at his current residence right across the street, I think we managed to make everybody happy. And again, another property that you invested a great deal of time and effort into the existing and mature trees that are on site, as well as improving the landscape appearance and
Sure.
aesthetic appearance of the house.
Okay, well, I'd like to make a motion. I'm happy with all the comments and from everyone here, and they've put me at ease. And I'd like to make a motion to approve these removals and have you move forward with your property, and
Thank you.
wish you well with that. So,
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Thank you
Okay,
very
thank
much.
you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. All right, next up is Radnor Memorial Library. Evening, gentlemen, if you could introduce yourself.
Will do here. Let me just get my presentation.
Oh, sure, okay.
Up, if I can. Here we go. Oh, did you? Sorry. Okay, I'll introduce myself first. I'm Martin Kimmel, the architect from Kimmel Bograd Architects. Have been working with the township for a number of years and the Radnor Memorial Library to figure out how they could expand on that site to meet their mission better, which they had articulated quite a few needs to do. So we've spent a lot of time figuring out how to work that out in what is a bit of a puzzle. And so I'm going to share with you very quickly what the project has become, which will lead into Andy's presentation to talk more directly about the trees. All right, so I'll go through that quick, and please don't hesitate to ask me a question if you have one. Well, that's interesting. We've used this presentation just last night, so I don't know why it's not working here. Do you know? Or you can help recite it for me?
Mr. Kimmel, your presentation from last night, Sue saying, might be on that laptop.
Oh, really? All right. All right. Try one more time with this one, and then that doesn't work, I think I have the one from separately named one from last night, so I apologize again. Oh, there we go. All right, so we worked with the library at length and with the township also collectively to develop a vision and mission for the library that, you know, ties it back to its roots and its kind of anchor tenant location, you know, right in the center of Wayne. So we did that. We had a series of core values, one of which is to be more of a beacon. If you go by there now, it's a kind of a recessive gene, if you will. The library kind of sits back there, and if you don't know it's there, you wouldn't be likely to know that it was there. So they want to be a little more present in the neighborhood. Second is they really wanted to open the library up. I mean, the library of today, I think a lot of people, you know, with the internet thought libraries would die. Libraries are booming, but they're booming in a different way, and they're not just repositories for books now. It's really about information and collaboration, so they need to reconfigure the building and create more space where that kind of thing can happen. In their current state, they have multiple different populations. The segment of the population they serve in Radnor is very diverse, from, you know, the very, very young to the very, very old and everybody in between, and what they found is those populations overlap in such a way that none of them can fully benefit in the way they could without a different layout. And then last but not least is one of the things they highly value is their porch setting and this kind of notion that makes it a little homier than the average library. So they really wanted to do a better version of a porch that they already like. And so that idea of creating a home away from home that people will go and hang after school and be part of community. So those were the big goals. I'm sure you're all familiar with the site, but when you see it from above, you can see in the pretty center part of the slide, it's shoehorned in. It's been there for roughly 40 years. It was a tight fit 40 years ago. The parking's tight and so on. There's not much vegetation left, and, you know, one of the challenges is, could we fit more? How can we do that and actually reduce our impact or break even in terms of impervious coverage and stormwater and all those type of things? Those were all the challenges that we were faced with. From a layout perspective right now, if you were to go onto the ground floor, it's a pretty basic concept, sort of a stubby T-shaped building. And we did numerous studies to figure out what to do, one of which was to tear the whole thing down, one of which was to move out of the center of Wayne and find a different site, but then that, you know, reduces the walkability, you know, so many things were discussed, and what was arrived at after much discussion was the layout you see before you. And what that does is that actually expands the footprint of the library over top of the parking lot while maintaining the parking spaces at the bottom of the slide. It actually pushes, which some of your ordinances encourage, pushes the building more towards West Wayne Avenue on the right-hand side of the slide, and then basically fills in and improves handicap accessibility and does a number of other things along the way. The concept that you see here was the concept that we kind of arrived on, and then when we started to study the site in more detail, we noticed that in front of the building there's a pretty darn nice heritage tree, right? And so there's really two trees on site, one at the bottom center and one at the front, the one at the front being the much healthier of the two. And so then we worked with the design concept to basically create space so that could be kept. And we had a tree expert come out to view it with us and talk about what we could do. We have our landscape architect here who will share that with you. And with a reconfiguration of the terrace and also a planned arching of the footing of the terrace to minimize impact on the root line. Everybody who's more professional about the tree than I am, and I'll let them speak to it, feels comfortable that we have a good chance to not impact that in such a way that it would come down. So we spent time figuring out how to do that, and we've included that in the plan design to manage it. You can again see sort of the red line indicates the original footprint. What you're seeing now is the existing layout. So you can see the building and the existing terrace are quite close to that same tree. We're only a couple feet closer. You'll see in some photographs that the tree has been trimmed because it overhangs the building, so it's already kind of been trimmed in that area. And you'll see that the center tree at the bottom also is exhibiting some signs of stress and health, and there's, you know, some dead at the top and whatnot. So the proposed layout, kind of from the ground level, you'll be able to see here, and I can let Andrew talk a little bit more to the landscape, But you can see we're greening up the parking lot, making room to plant additional trees, trying to preserve the one really substantial tree on the site. Obviously, we are planning to remove the one other tree, and that's what I'm sure a lot of your questions will be about. And then overall, improving the landscape of that site quite a bit. So we're reducing the net impervious coverage as a result of the project as well, even though we're expanding the footprint of the building. Just a couple views before we switch gears. Here is the prominent tree in the front left is the main tree in question in terms of impact to stay. And for the purposes of the renderings that we did, we drew it without that tree. So when I show you the rendering of the front and the tree's not there, it's not because it's intended to be gone. It was for visual purposes, for the design of the building to be presented. So that becomes the new front along West Wayne Avenue. You can see pretty prominently the porch. And this is in the, sorry.
Do you know the species of that tree in front?
Pin oak, I believe.
Yeah.
Is it pin oak?
Pin oak. Pin oak, yeah. This was the original design. You see on the left where the terrace and the steps go up. That's right where the tree is, and that's what got redesigned in the plan that you saw to move the ramp to the far end to compress the stair back so that we wouldn't be impacting that. The concept was done before we even had the survey done, so that's really why we didn't pick that up right away. Here you see it prominently. On the right-hand side of the slide, the other tree is in the parking lot. You can see the trunk of it, and it doesn't have quite as substantial a canopy as the one I think Andrew will mention. It's probably been stressed by that parking lot for a long time. Here you can see it as proposed from that same angle, again with the large tree removed for visual purposes only. Here from a similar angle, as you just come up from the post office. And you get an impression we're still going to create a nice way to access the building. And you'll be able to access the building now in two directions with handicap accessibility. And that was talked about. And then if you go to the rear of the lot, the South Wayne lot, you can see there's a couple of trees that are on the property that are coming down, and you can kind of get a sense of their condition there in the foreground, within that being the side that you'll see. So the building kind of have two fronts, where right now it kind of arguably has no front. So, so I think that's a good place to turn it over. Unless you have questions for me, and obviously I'll be here, so I can come back anytime.
I have a couple of comments from yesterday, but
Yes.
I think I should wait till
Okay.
he speaks to the tree.
My name's Andrew Corzon. I'm a landscape architect with Land Studies. Martin's group brought us in, I think, sometime early October of this past fall to assist with taking the library plans through the land development process, and part of that obviously brought us here in front of you all. We had an arborist that we work with. We work with Bartlett Tree Experts, who I believe they are licensed to work in the township here. Scott Thatcher was the arborist that took a look at the site for us, and we essentially tasked him with saying, look, we know that we are going to impact this site, so if you could give us just a very general, very cursory assessment of the condition of all the trees. He generated a report for us, and in that report, he identified 4 trees for removal. 2 ash species for unspecified defects, which are on this plan. A silver maple that was leaning, that is right on the property line, up in this area of the property. And then there's 3 calorie pears that he also recommended for removal. Those do not fall on the property, so those weren't included in this plan. The 48-inch pin oak that is bottom center on the plan that we are proposing for removal, he did recommend that some pretty significant pruning be done because there was some issues with the crown. And you can see in the pictures that we provided with the application that, it's taken from afar, but there's some pretty obvious gaps and some defoliation happening, which is likely due to the impacts from the parking lot. That's speculative, of course, but.
Excuse me, we're looking for photos.
The revised plan doesn't have anything but aerials in it, but we have it from our previous packet, so we can look it up. If you just give us a second, we'll look it up.
That tree you're referring to, though, has to be removed because of the structure.
The ash.
No, the tree right in the parking lot edge, is that what you,
Yeah.
yes. That's
The overhang
one you were
structure,
talking about.
yeah. The overhang over the parking lot. That's why that's being removed.
What's the size and species of that tree?
It's a 48-inch pin oak.
So, excuse me, so Bartlett on the 48-inch oak,
They,
was a significant pruning?
yeah, they recommended significant crown pruning. But they did note, they were coming in before we went through with the plans. So as the plans came together, they would reassess based on what the plans, and we haven't gotten to that point with them yet where we've gone back to them and said, here's the plan. Take a look at things from the standpoint of what's proposed at this point. So they were looking at it as a blank slate. Here's the site. Here's what we have. As the plans came together, we landed on the removal of 2 trees as a product of the design, one being the 48-inch pin oak, another being a 4-inch Japanese maple, which I think under the ordinance, we listed it because it's being removed.
Right.
But and then the other 3 are the 2 ashes and the leaning silver maple. There are, I think, 2 other ashes on the site that he recommended be treated for emerald ash borer. So it's possible that, the defects are a symptom of emerald ash borer.
Right.
So we would look to remove those. Those would be replaced. I think we're recommending red maples as their replacement. The ash in the bottom corner that we're pulling out of the parking lot, there's a tree going right back in where that's being pulled out.
Okay.
And the silver maple, we're pulling that because it's leaning, and they're kind of notorious for being limb droppers.
Yeah. Okay. So on, can you go back to that
Sure.
slide? So on the, would be the north side where there's that other pin oak that you're going to remove.
This is the
Next to
pin.
the Japanese maple.
Right here.
That one there, that's going, correct?
That's staying.
Oh, that is
Yeah,
staying.
that's
Oh,
a-
I see. I understand,
Yes.
okay.
And that was, one of the iterations of the front entrance was this handicap ramp with a switchback
Right,
that would have
okay.
forced us to remove
Right.
it. We revised that ramp to try to work around that tree, knowing that
Right.
we were taking the 48-inch out.
Okay.
And that's a really nice looking tree, so it's important to us that
Okay.
that be kept.
Have you concluded your comments for a second?
Yeah.
The only recommendation that planning made was that to the rear of the library, where there's that diagonal path, that we try to, or we suggested that maybe a rain garden, because when they tested the soils here, they cannot do underground retention. It's impossible. But a rain garden would mitigate it a tiny bit. It would be a design thing that everybody agreed to look at last night, and it would be educational for students. This is a rain garden. It could be signage and
Right.
the whole thing. So I want to reiterate that we still think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. We do have 5, I think, Canadian hemlocks planned there. We wanted to put a screen behind the concrete, the dumpster pad, and if we are able to work out the rain garden, we would still plant trees there, but they would obviously change. The species would be different because of the change in hydrology.
Okay.
Planning gave it approval yesterday, too.
I'm just looking at your plant selections for replacements here, that's all. As far as that 48-inch oak, I mean, it's, I know where this is. I live close by. I mean, it's above parking. I know it's not in the optimal condition. Whether it's going to get worse, I don't know. I mean, we don't know that.
Right.
To severely prune something like that age, and I'm not going to guess its age, but I mean, it's not that young, that could possibly severely impact that.
Right.
So yeah, I know it's it's sad to see such a large tree like that go. I mean, this project looks like really a nice project, and I see a lot of your replacements are well thought out. I don't know if anybody has any other comments. Sure.
I would clarify that when Bartlett recommended significant pruning, I think he was speaking more towards the effort behind the pruning, not the amount of pruning.
Oh, okay.
So
I see. Okay.
You're not going to do the pruning at this point, other than as part of a removal process, because
right, it would be, yeah, we'd
no, it'd
remove
be
it.
a waste.
Right.
Yeah.
We do have maintenance recommendations from Bartlett that we'll be passing on for the remaining trees on the property. I felt like they were all valid, whether it's pruning, mild, significant, or treatments or fertilization. We'll be passing those along to the township as well.
Okay.
Can you point out where replacement or additional shade trees are going to be on that map?
Yes.
And what they are, if you know?
We have the parking lot trees. We have a red maple going in here, and that's basically a one-to-one replacement of one of the ash trees. We have a second red maple going in at the entrance. It was kind of in trying to meet some of the landscaping requirements of the subdivision ordinances. That seemed like a logical location for that. And then we have, this is a river birch back in this location. And then again, we have 5 Canadian hemlocks located here. But if the plan changes as part of the discussion with the Planning Commission last night with the rain garden, those would be changed to something more appropriate for a bioretention facility.
Well, I know we discussed the ash trees. You said there's 2 ash trees that may come out at a later date?
The 2 ash trees we would plan to take out as part of construction. There are 2 other ash trees that they noted should be treated for emerald ash borer.
Right.
And those would remain.
Those would remain.
Have they shown any evidence of borer in them? I mean, eggs, are there drill holes? Is there any, do you know specifically? I mean, it's not a big deal. I'm just curious.
No, they didn't mention that they didn't mention there was evidence of it. I got the impression it was as a precaution.
Well, Mike noted that from what we see, there's only 1 shade tree going in, which is that red maple.
Two red maples.
2. I'm sorry,
right.
2.
Yes.
Is there any way we can change that? We can add to that?
I mean, who's in charge of the plant list? I guess is the best question to ask.
Right here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, you mean in terms of maybe swapping out the river birch for something more substantial, I think that would be, you know, if they're okay with it from the architecture standpoint, I don't see any problem with that. There are plenty of hardy canopy trees on that list. You know, it was, we put it in from a design standpoint. There wasn't really a preference for not putting a shade tree in. And like I said, as we work through the changes for that rain garden, we could try to put some additional shade trees there. We are somewhat restricted because the plantable area on the site, we don't have a lot of it, so we're trying to find that happy medium between, you know, putting enough to satisfy what we need to do for the ordinance, but also considering tree health and not turning the lot into a forest. So there's a balancing act that we are trying to achieve here, but I would have no issues trying to, you know, look at replacing the river birch for a canopy tree and look at trying to get at least another one in, and then whatever results from the change where we might put the rain garden in.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Corzine, you would make that, so we can make the board comfortable, they will become shade trees, the 2 that you mentioned?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll have to work with Martin and his group to make sure that we're putting something in that they're comfortable with, given its proximity to the building. But a river birch is going to get 70, 80 feet tall, so that's going to overhang the building. So a shade tree, certainly, I don't really know another 30, 40 feet is going to be an issue in terms of height. Martin, is that? We're not, I don't think so. There's 3 trees there out front that we are keeping, and I think trying to jam another tree in there might not be
Right.
good for the other trees.
Also sightline issues as well.
What,
Just,
any?
just
Oh, I'm
thinking
sorry.
outside the box for a second. You have the South Wayne lot right there. Could we lose a space and have a major tree put in there?
I have wanted for many years to go in between all those spaces and remove the asphalt and plant trees to get rid of the sea of blacktop that we have there. I would think there's got to be, Mr. Kundis, someplace that we could plant a tree on that lot that's maybe not even a spot, maybe like, you know, near one of the exits or entrances, or where we have some ability to do that. I think we could, with Mr. Haas back here, we could do that. And I think that might be a nice touch. My hope is that someday that lot gets used for stormwater management, but in the short term, and a tree can be moved, it's not that bad. I think that's a great idea.
Of course, right after the perk test they just did, and that begins to make you wonder if you could do that on that lot.
I know, it might just be rate control and no volume.
And I did miss we are putting a 3rd red maple by the accessible parking. There's an island there. So actually 3 red maples are going in the parking lot.
Okay.
So we would keep those, swap out the river birch for another canopy tree. That would get us to 4. And then however we work out the rain garden, we'll try to comply with what you guys want from us.
Okay.
there, so.
Chair, what would you recommend as wet-footed shade trees that would like living in a rain garden?
Well, they'll get gigantic. You know, John, some dogwoods like wet. I've seen dogwoods in rain gardens.
I'll tell you what'll really work in that low area is pawpaws. Pawpaws will work.
Impossible to find nice stock that's 12, so.
Well, you're going to have to plant a couple of species, and they got root runners. I don't know whether you can control them or not. They will work in that low-lying area, John. I mean, if you got it, but I don't think you don't have enough room for them. You need a grove.
You gotta remember the fruit as well.
Well, it's kind of a mess. People will eat it.
A pin oak would
This isn't a place for a mess.
Pin oaks like wet
yeah,
feet.
from, if we look at what the wetland indicator status is of some of these trees, a pin oak would fit the bill as a fact species.
The only problem, Gus, is the soil there in that area is a lot more alkaline, and that's where we get the chlorosis with the pin oaks. We don't want to be going back in the barn all the time, and then you have the bacterial leaf spores sensitive.
Right.
So, most urban foresters are telling people to stay away from the pin oaks where you have chlorosis.
Mhm.
But aren't there huge pin oaks on the property?
What's that?
With the river birch, I think it's going to give a good outline. It does get large, not going to get humongous like red maples. However, the river birch is going to give a nice offset, some texture to the property, and most importantly, some winter interest during the course of the other months when the red maples and that.
How will it stay wet enough, John?
Absolutely.
How will it stay wet enough?
Well, it's going to stay moist over there. I mean, that's it.
It's a low.
Absolutely.
Oh, it is low. Okay.
And the limited infiltration kind of, and you do have a little bit of an existing low point on the property there. So I think you could anticipate some.
Your
hydraulic-
soil test showed wet soil.
Right, yeah, modeled actually, so.
It's already there.
And all the cultivars are of birch now are that door variety, so.
What about putting Canadian? Are we happy with Canadian hemlock because of the woolly adelgia? Do we?
It's our state tree.
Well, the hemlocks
Yeah,
are coming out of the rain garden side. He already said.
They are.
In the event,
In the,
Depends on the hydrology, if they get the rain garden in, whether or not.
okay.
yeah, that's what I was gonna, we could, my preference would likely be when we put the rain garden in would be typically to use river birch because they've been successful for us in those types of facilities. We've had luck with serviceberry too, but that's not nearly as big a tree as a mature height as what the river birch is. So I would support putting river birch in, you get a nice grove of river birch in there. Yeah, like John said, it'll look great in the winter.
Okay. All right.
Frankly, I think your selection is good. What we try to do is pay as much attention as we can to native species. And I think you're obviously knowledgeable enough to know what that is, and we'll work with you. This is a very exciting project.
Good, great.
If you look at what Ludington has done to Lower Marion over in the center of Radnor, that has been a phenomenal success, and I would love to see Radnor do the same thing.
Well, that's what we're trying to do.
Your thought and consideration into it so far is beautiful.
Right.
It's on the right track. I couldn't be happier. So
Great.
I thank you guys for your diligence and your time. Very, very well done.
And I'm the rookie here tonight, but please think about putting 1 or 2 trees in that South Wayne lot.
Yeah, if Steve will pay me, I'll do it.
Work with Steve on that.
I just get the feeling that you guys don't consider this. You consider this a work in progress, and that you are perfectly willing to consult with people that know, et cetera, et cetera. It's in everybody's best interest to do that. It's our township.
I just want to jump in. It's not a work in progress. They have to do it this year. There's a grant that they will, a $500,000 grant. They will lose if they don't.
See, we never get the money side.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, they got to go.
But in that same idea, it's important for us, for me as the landscape architect, that we put the right plant in the right place. It's a really critical, it's a mantra that I really follow. So.
And you have to use 3-gallon containers to get in there because of your soils. Is that right, John? Well, I think.
We could amend the soil in the short term. We could also, we have resources for larger container plantings that in some circumstances have actually been better performers than a bald and burlap. A number 15 is
The same after 10 years.
right. So, and I support using a number 15 many times over a bald and burlap 1 to 1.5 inch caliper
I would
tree.
agree with you wholeheartedly.
So,
Okay. Well, I motion to move this forward with the thought, as we discussed, some adjustments on additional shade trees. And anyone else have any other thing to add? I think,
Make a motion to approve.
yeah. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much for your time.
Mr. Chairman, as far as Archbishop Carroll is concerned, we looked at that prior to the meeting, and administratively, they were here because they were moving 9,200 cubic yards of dirt, not that there
Right.
was trees
Right.
affected. So he's off the agenda. I know
Okay.
that might upset you all, that we lost another item, but
Okay. Then we are on to 131, 133 Garrett Avenue. Good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name's Dave Zepp, and I'm with Joseph M. Estock Engineers and Surveyors. And this is Mr. Brasso, David Brasso. He's the partner in DJB Properties, the owner and the applicant of the project. To give you a little background of the project, it's a small site. It's about 10,000 square feet. It's located at 131, 133 Garrett Avenue in the Garrett Hill neighborhood district. Like I said, it's a small site. It's like 63 feet wide, 173 feet deep. And currently, the existing condition of the property, it's a vacant lot. There are some trees on the property. They're all of the small variety. There's no tree greater than 8 inches, on the property, and most of them are in the range of 3 to 7 inches. The existing conditions plan that I'm looking at here in front of you, I'm just going to point those out. There's a 3-inch tree in the rear middle of the property right here. and then there's about 6 existing trees that are along the rear property line. And as I said before, they're all of the small variety. They're no greater than 8 inches. That 3-inch tree that falls in the middle of the site is, going to be disturbed by the proposed development, which I'll lay out next. But the existing trees along the rear property line, of the 6 that were located there, 5 of them are going to be retained. There was one that was just forward a little bit that our grading for, when I turn to the post-construction management, stormwater management plan, the grading is going to impact it, and we felt that it would be better, not try and keep it, and since it was a 3-inch tree. The existing trees that are shown on the site, we did not identify the variety as to what they are, so I can't answer that question right now. But now, with that being the condition of the site, basically, the existing trees that were there, I'm going to turn the attention to the post-construction stormwater management plan, which basically will show you the layout. And what Mr. Brasso is proposing to do is build 2 single-family attached homes on the property. And there's an existing driveway on the northeast side that will provides access to the adjoining property, but it's also going to be providing the access for the parking that we're going to have to provide for the 2 units that are going on the site. Originally, or whatever, we had plans where there were front-loading garages, but it was beneficial to us to eliminate that. It was conflicted with the neighborhood, and what we went with then was putting the parking in the rear. So the 2 units will face Garrett. The parking access will come in off the northeast side on there'll be an addition and a widening of a drive. There's an existing driveway there now because there's an existing 8-foot wide alley. And the adjoining property owner, I hope I pronounced them right, the Rabuka property, whatever, they access it, and then when the townhouses are built and everything, these property owners will access that driveway also and come back to the parking in the rear. And then all the stormwater management for the site and everything is going to be handled. I laid the post-construction stormwater management plan out here so you can see where that will be. It's this large area here where we're putting an underground system in, a seepage bed, behind the parking lot. An effort was made to move that forward and limit the grading so we'd be able to save those 5 existing trees along the rear property line. But once again, we felt that the 3-inch tree that we're proposing to have removed, whatever, would not be able to survive the grading. In addition to the existing 3-inch tree, which is more or less in the middle of the site, it falls right in the middle of where the seepage bed's going to go. Then, as far as the proposed planning for the property, whatever, as required by the Township Code, we're required to provide 2 shade street trees out along Garrett, and what we proposed there to meet that requirement is we're planting 2 maples along the frontage, 1 on each lot. The existing driveway and the widening of it on the north side of the lot kind of limited the location there. So we proposed the 1 tree more or less in the middle of the lot, and then the 2nd tree that was required is actually on the southwest corner of the property, in that front yard area. So I think that's it as far as, it's the small project here as far as my presentation. I'll stop talking, and I don't know, Mr. Brasso, if you have anything you'd like to mention to the board here before, or I'll just open it up to, if you have any questions.
Not being familiar with Radnor Township in terms of developing.
Could you speak into Mike?
Sure.
Thanks.
I've done most of my development at Conshohocken, so I'm not that familiar with Radnor. And Conshohocken gives a lot of latitude in terms of what you want to do landscaping-wise. The trees in the back are understated. They're not tall. I don't think they're ever going to get tall enough to provide a proper screen. Directly behind the site that we're going to develop is a parking lot that services a commercial, a business complex, office complex of some sort. So your backyard looks right through a chain link fence and into a parking lot, which is less than ideal. I know there's trees there now, but I'd prefer to plant something more substantial to provide a little bit more of a visual screen. I just don't know the proper way to go about that in Radnor. So I'm basically wondering that what latitude do I have to take those trees out and replace them with something more substantial?
Well, first of all, I know you initially spoke about there was going to be a grading issue, grading work done around, that's going to impact one of the trees. And I know you said you didn't know what species it was. We need to know what that is, especially if there's going to be grading impact. And also, can you show me that on the blueprint? Where you said there was going to be the grading?
What would really help, first of all, if you could give us a frame of reference for where on Garrett Avenue this is. You got Conestoga Road, you got a P&W line, you have a big ball field back there, and then you have way down, as you get towards Lancaster Pike, you've got like, what is the name of that? There's an apartment complex, big high-rise apartment complex. Just kind of give me an approximate idea of where you're located on that road.
If you come in from Lancaster Avenue and you cross the train track bridge, it's almost the midpoint between the train tracks and the next street. I don't know if that's Conestoga Road, on the left-hand side.
Okay.
There's
I figured it was.
I don't know how familiar you are with that street, but there's a newish twin right next to it, the Rubicon. What is it?
I pronounce it Rabuka.
Rabuka.
Close if they're in the audience. I
Rabuka
apologize.
property is a newish twin there. It kind of looks like a beach house. It's a top and
I
bottom.
know which one. I know where you are.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, I'm on
It
page.
more or less falls almost in the middle of the block between the railroad tracks, as Mr. Brasso stated, and Conestoga Road.
I'm on page, I'm on sheet 3 of 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the top of that page, there's an X. You're removing a tree. That would be north.
Those are arborvitaes.
That one there, right? Okay, so that's an arborvitae.
Yes.
All right, that's. Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay.
So it does drop off quite a bit towards the.
Oops.
Is it more than like 15%?
No.
And then on the.
Those, actually, I wanted to confirm, and I wasn't misleading you, on our
Okay.
existing conditions plan, that exit was there. There's 2 3-inch arborvitaes there.
Okay. Can't see it out there.
And then the 1 3-inch tree or whatever is more or less right here in the middle of our sea beach bed.
Right.
And then there's a 3-inch tree to be removed, where we're going to be doing some grading off the back of the proposed parking and everything. And we felt that that would not survive the change of grade around it.
Right. Well, it would be nice to know the species, because it's hard for us, we just need to know the species. That would be helpful, especially, sir, you asked about, you would like to remove some of these and maybe replace them. We would want to know what you're going to be removing, and we would have to know that. So, yeah, I kind of in the dark about what trees what's back there.
They're
I think
likely
your question
volunteer
was,
trees.
I think your question was, can you remove the screen trees that are presently being saved because they're not very tall and put in a better screen? Was that your other question?
Yeah, I mean,
And then that goes.
based on memory, there's not any distinctive trees there to add any ornamental value. I think they're mostly volunteer trees. I personally don't visually recall what species they are. We could certainly try to identify them. They're not, I don't think anything.
Right.
They're,
I don't think
No, I can't get any closer.
I don't think
Right.
there's anything back in
Okay.
Yeah, they're not trees anyone planted intentionally. I think they're
Right,
volunteer
right.
trees that just
I
kind of
understand.
popped up on a vacant lot, and they're giant weeds, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, I'd want to put something like green giants or a mix of evergreens back there. That's going to maybe get to 30 feet tall at some point to sort of give the right protection for the deck and some other things in there.
Again, as the rookie, I think what his question, and Mike's question is if the existing things are like sumacs and really rat trees, so to speak, then it would be easier to just say, go ahead and, come up with a landscape plan and not go through a lot of
Right.
protocol and.
Yeah, what's
Hey, John, are you going by here anytime at all? I mean, if you just swing up there going through Garrett Hill? I mean, because this is kind of de minimis as far as I'm concerned. All right.
Okay. All right, well, yeah, that sounds fair. We'll have our township arborist take a look at what you have here, and that'll make us feel more comfortable, I believe. And
If you guys would just exchange contact information.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll give you approval to go ahead once John just gives us a nod. We'll just
Okay.
make a motion to do that. Will that-
Yeah.
And then
based upon township arborist inspection.
sure. And then in terms of what we might plant there, does Radnor require sealed plans from a landscape architect for your submission of land development and the other?
Not that I'm.
No? Okay.
I don't think so.
This is Conshohocken.
To Steve.
Do we need do we have a sealed plan requirement for them to proceed
So when,
No, for landscaping.
for the landscaping side?
no, he needs a civil for the plan, per se, for grading permit and that. There is not a requirement for an RLA on that. So if you approve it with the condition that he meets with the township arborist, that's perfectly fine.
Okay. So more a handshake agreement. You trust it will do the right thing and submit the right plans.
And if you want to put John.
Yeah,
green-
it'll be in the minutes, and when they come for grading permit,
Right.
our engineer will have that, and he'll know that XYZ has to be on there.
Okay, so I would like to approve this with the conditions of our township arborist. We'll take a look at what you're doing there and what trees are there to make sure they are scrub trees.
Right.
And I'll make a motion to approve this with those conditions are met.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks.
And ma'am?
Your green giants are fine. I think you probably know how to space them out all right.
What's that?
I think you know how to space them out all right.
Let's hope. Seen it done poorly, but
Thank you.
you bet. Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right. From what I see, we have one hazardous tree removal to look at, and that is the Radnor Station Office Building, a 40-inch ash. Tree's declining is dead. Accompanied photo. And applicant was asked to plant a tree. Okay. Looks in order to me.
The one item, and really this is just an informal introduction to the committee tonight. So PICO is going to be doing a lot of work in the center of Wayne, specifically from Lancaster Avenue to Station/West on North Wayne Avenue. And they're going to be installing new electric service, literally, tearing up the sidewalks to do so. So the manager thought that that would be a good time. We have some open spaces for trees there, and there are other trees that have been planted, and the manager thought this would be a good time to really do a planting as a series, as instead of just each year we drop one in when one dies, let's look at removing what's there and starting anew with appropriate trees that are sidewalk friendly and all that good stuff. So Commissioner Nagel had said, hey, let's make sure we reach out to the Shade Tree Commission. So what I'd like to do is just put that in the back of your mind. The next meeting, I'll pull up a Google Earth or a GIS to show a picture. There are 16 trees that we're talking about.
Okay.
I had spoke to John a little bit about it. He said, Steve, if you can give us a little bigger well area, that can make a huge difference. My thought was we could use, so right now we mulch these trees, and if you go to Dinner and Wayne, there's this big hump of mulch. So my thought was we could use those plastic sidewalk grates that are easy to install and they're walkable and it reduces tripping hazards. The folks in that area, the businesses would like to put LED Christmas lights on them pretty much year round. So would take that into consideration. Mm-hmm. So just until our next meeting, if you want to think about that, I'll bring some maps, and if I could get some suggestions from you as to appropriate trees, knowing they're sidewalk trees, knowing there's not a drop of grass anywhere near where we're talking about, and the fact that there's a lot of pedestrians and restaurants. Mm-hmm. That's all I really had on that.
Okay, that sounds great.
So it excludes all fruit, legumes, all those things. You know, one gate goes in there?
I don't know what a pow-pow is, but I'd like to see one. I don't know what that is.
You're welcome. They're outside my fence. You know that.
All right. Well, this concludes the Tuesday, rescheduled Tuesday, March 8th, Radnor Shade Tree Township committee meeting, excuse me. Thank you.